crowd surged at the venue, but there was a noticeable sense of reverence in the air. This wasn't just another show. It was personal, intimate, despite the thousands in attendance. Andy Taylor, guitarist of Duran Duran, had come home. And as the spotlight settled on him under the haze of stage lights, it was clear this was more than a concert. It was a full circle moment, decades in the making. For Andy, returning to his hometown of Colorcoats, a coastal village in northeast England, meant confronting memories, some tender, others bittersweet. He had left as a young man chasing a dream, an escape artist with a guitar slung over his shoulder and the hunger for something bigger. What he found was more than stardom. With Duran Duran, he helped shape a generation's soundtrack, filled arenas, topped charts, and partied with royalty and rebels alike. But despite the glamour, the journey wasn't without shadows. Life had thrown its share of curveballs, some public, others deeply private. This show wasn't originally on the tour schedule. It came about after months of discussion, and if you asked Andy, it was something he needed to do, not just for the fans, but for himself. A way to reconnect, a way to say thank you, a way to heal. He hadn't played in color coats since the early days before Rio, before Hungry Like the Wolf, before the world knew his name. Walking through the streets earlier that day, he paused outside the tiny pub where he once played to a dozen disinterested patrons and a barman who told him to turn it down. Now, posters of the hometown hero hung in every window. Backstage before the gig, the mood was contemplative. Andy sat quietly, tuning his guitar, lost in thought. He glanced occasionally at old photographs stuck to the wall, grainy shots of him and his mates, hair wild, eyes full of ambition. Members of his family, some of whom hadn't seen him perform in years, filled the wings. There were hugs, misty eyes, and a lot of hand squeezing. When the lights dropped and the familiar opening riff of Girls on Film echoed through the speakers, the crowd erupted. But Andy wasn't just playing for the fans. He was playing for his father, who used to sneak into the clubs to watch him play before Duran Duran was even a dream. He was playing for his late mother, who'd once sold a piece of jewelry to help him buy his first proper amplifier. And he was playing for the teenage version of himself, who had sat on the rocky shore dreaming of stages far beyond the village limits. Throughout the set, Andy was more than a guitarist. He was a storyteller. Between songs, he shared pieces of his journey, candidly recalling how fame changed everything, how the band fractured and reunited, how illness had made him reconsider what really mattered. When he spoke of his recent health battles, the crowd fell silent. There was no pretense, no rock star bravado, just vulnerability and grace. "I didn't think I'd be back on this stage," he said softly, "but here we are. And it's better than I ever imagined." The setlist was a blend of Duran Duran classics and deeper cuts, peppered with solo tracks and even a cover of a local favorite from his youth. But it was the acoustic rendition of Ordinary World that hit hardest. Stripped back and raw, Andy's voice cracked just slightly as he sang. Many in the crowd sang along, but others simply watched in awe, tears streaking their cheeks. At one point, a childhood friend joined him on stage, a surprise to even Andy. The two hugged, laughed, and launched into an impromptu jam session that felt more garage band than global tour, and that was exactly the point. This wasn't about perfection, it was about connection. By the time the encore rolled around, the venue was buzzing with an almost spiritual energy. He ended with Save a Prayer, dedicating it to everyone we've loved and lost. The audience swayed, candles and phones lighting the darkness, and as the last note rang out, Andy stood motionless, eyes closed, soaking it all in. Backstage afterward, the atmosphere was electric and emotional. Friends and family embraced him, some crying, some speechless. A former schoolteacher clutched his hand and told him how proud the town was. A young local musician, barely out of school, handed him a demo CD and said, "You made me believe this was possible." Later that night, Andy walked alone to the beach, guitar in hand. The sea was calm, the moon bright. He strummed quietly, the wind catching the notes and carrying them off toward the horizon. There was no crowd now, just him, the waves, and the place where it all began. It's rare for rock legends to come home and find peace, but Andy Taylor did. Not through the adulation or applause, but through the quiet moments, the unspoken recognition that he had come full circle. This wasn't just a gig, it was a homecoming of the soul, and for those lucky enough to witness it, the night was unforgettable.